destroyed. But if that happens, what can we do about that? Not much. So let's just party. But in the meantime, since we are still here, we've got to start thinking about what's going on and what we're going to do about it. And there's some stuff going on that just drives me nuts because I don't want to start trying to allude to my age. But how many of you all are Star Wars fans? Yeah, Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, Well, if you think about the storyline of Star Wars, they had the free and democratic republic, and then it got turned into the evil empire. Well, folks, I grew up in the free republic, and now I live in the evil empire. Okay? And yet, hey, how can you say that? This is the United States of America, the arsenal of hypocrisy. Well, I can tell you how I can say that, because I've always been really proud of my country, the United States of America, because we were the country, we didn't start wars, we stopped wars. But wait a minute, now we're starting wars. Now they're talking about going to war with Iran. Well, wait a minute, what's Iran ever done to us, I mean, if Iran really wanted to hurt us, they'd cut off the flow of 7-Eleven managers and convenience store operators. No, Iranians they're good people too, just like everybody around the world. Everywhere I go, and I've been a lot of places. I've even been to Tibet, and there's good people in Tibet. Unfortunately, they're subjects now of the Chinese who, try to tell us that they're bringing freedom and democracy. Just like we're bringing freedom and democracy to the Middle East. Except that's not really right either, is it? You remember when the Blackwater massacred all those Iraqis in the square, killed about 47 people? And the government of Iraq, who, let's face it, was our little puppet government, the people we put in power, they finally had it up to here and they said, that's it, we want Blackwater out of here. And what did us, the great freedom-loving America, what did we say? No, you can't do that, they're under contract and they're going to stay. How's that for freedom and democracy? I'm telling you, folks, we got some real problems, and the biggest problem is that your friends and or relatives don't know it. And why is that? Because they're watching TV. And I'll tell you something, one of the things that got censored out of my last book, The $1 Trillion Conspiracy, was a whole section on how the corporations control the media. And I told my editor, and this was of course HarperCollins, a Rupert Murdoch property, I said, well, you just proved my point, didn't you? No, can't talk about it, but one of the things in there was a study done by the Project Censored, which every year issues the top 25 stories that are censored from the U.S. media or downplayed to insignificance. And they did a study a few years back to show that the major media in this country have interlocking boards of directors with the major corporations. Now we all know GE owns NBC, and we know some of this, but the control is very, very tight. That's why you never hear much of anything on the media. In 2008, they pretty well ignored Ron Paul. This year, they've tried mightily, but it's cracking through, isn't it? Now, the next time that you hear somebody say, well, I kind of like what Ron Paul says, but he's unelectable. I want you to look him in the eye and I want to say, is that your thought? Did you wake up one morning and say, well, he's unelectable? Or are you listening to the corporate media? Because I'm here to tell you, if everyone in this country who would say, well, I kind of like what Ron Paul says, but he's unelectable, if they'd vote for him, he could be elected. He could be. And we've got to do something. We have got to do something. Because this year, I've heard every election since I voted for Barry Goldwater, back in whenever that was, 1964, I guess. And you know, I was told then, why, if you vote for Barry Goldwater over Lyndon Johnson, there's going to be a war in Southeast Asia, and there'll be riots in the streets of America. And you know what? They were right. Because that's exactly what happened. But it wasn't Barry Goldwater, he didn't get elected. And this is the whole key to the whole thing. Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservatives, who cares? And it's all controlled by the same bunch, right? So you've got to get your friends and or relatives off of this Democrat-Republican paradigm, because it hasn't been working and it's not working now. And anyone with half a brain, one eye can kind of understand that it's not really working, but they can't quite pull themselves out of that because, well, wait a minute, if you don't vote for a Republican or a Democrat, you know, who can we vote for? All right, and I've got to admit, the worst thing can happen this year is if we get some third party, particularly a third party that talks about patriotism, the U.S. Constitution, et cetera, because what's going to happen? It's going to split the patriotic conservative vote, and Obama will get in for another 4 years. That's what's going to happen. And I think Ron Paul understands that, and that's because he's already said several times he's not going to run as a third party candidate. That's why you've got to get out and start pushing your friends. Again, it's not Democrat or Republican. This is coming down to, do we want to free America or do we want to continue down the road of corporate fascism, right? Okay, now what is fascism? Look at the dictionary. It's the blending of corporate and state power. And if that doesn't define what's happened in this country, I don't know what does. And Supreme Court has now said that the corporations can be treated as an individual, so they can contribute all amount of money they want to their particular candidate, which of course, if you stop and think about it, whoever has the most money wins the elections because they get on TV, you know? Well, and that's why they put up Mitt Romney, because he's got more money than the rest of them. All right, so don't fall for that. And I say, well, wait a minute, if the corporations can be treated as an individual, how come we hadn't put them in jail? How many people lost their home, lost their lives, lost their freedom, okay? And this whole thing about law. We were talking about this on the radio with Alex here earlier. How many of y'all have been in the military? There we go, pretty good amount. I got an honorable discharge from the U.S. Army myself, and I have nothing but gratitude and the utmost respect for people who've served in uniform. But folks, the guys and gals that are in uniform today are being snookered, all right? Because when I took the oath to go into the U.S. military, it was an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States. Against all enemies, foreign or domestic. And right now, I think our biggest enemies are domestic. Say that. I've been hearing the news stories that they've been sending letters out to and issuing orders to guys active in the military and veterans saying that you may be in violation of the U.S. military code of conduct if you attend a Ron Paul meeting or a political meeting or one of these demonstrations, blah, blah, blah. Well, excuse me, those regulations are subservient to the U.S. Constitution. And therefore, as far as I'm concerned, those are illegal orders. And we were told, I was told when I was in the Army during Vietnam, that we were not supposed to obey illegal orders.
Terry
So what
Lakewood.
are they going to do when they order them to come to your door, kick down your door, and take your firearms? Yeah, well, I think they realize there'd be a problem there, so why do you think all the foreign troops are in this country? And why do you think they're moving tanks and APCs and other military equipment all around the country? Because think about it, it would take less than a day to paint all those vehicles blue and put a UN sticker on. And then we got a peacekeeping force. And of course you see how the peacekeeping forces, how many people have died under those peacekeeping forces. So we got real problems, okay? And now I'm seeing where the TSA is setting up checkpoints right here in Dallas, in Texas. Okay, now wait a minute. These are our public servants on the federal payroll to protect us against terrorists. Now, can anybody tell me in one voice how many terrorists have the TSA caught? Zero, zip, nada, niche, nothing. So why are we putting
Underwear
up with
bomber.
this is what I want to know. And I'll tell you why. Because in Texas, with its whole heritage of freedom, we got out from under the tyranny of Santa Ana. And I don't care what La Raza people want to tell you, this was not a race thing, okay? You had a lot of Hispanic Texans fought right there, okay? And this was a freedom movement. This is not, they didn't get distracted by race like we are. This was about free people versus people that wanted to control everybody else. So we got to just say no. Now the big problem now is that we've been so fat and complacent in recent years that we've let a bunch of New World Order tools get in charge of our state. If you don't believe me, think back to when the Texas House passed some legislation that said if a TSA guy stuck his hand in your pants, he could be arrested for molestation and charged $2,000 and maybe even given a jail sentence. Right on. 30 of the 31 state senators said, yeah, we'll sign off on that. And even New World Order tool Perry said, yeah, okay, yeah, we can do that. Okay. And then what happened? The Department of Justice comes down and says, well, if you pass that legislation, we're going to declare Texas a no-fly zone, and you won't be able to fly out of any Texas airport, you know. So David Dewhurst and Perry, both New World Order tools, said, oh, well, and they pulled the legislation. How's that for freedom and democracy? How's that for the will of the people? Okay? Those weak-kneed sisters, okay? Now, what would I have done? I just said, okay, Washington, you declare Texas a no-fly zone and we'll just stop sending tax revenues to Washington. And it's the time for straddling the fence and sitting in your couch and watching TV and eating chips. It's over with, okay? Now, you guys are here, so I'm talking to you. All right? Each and every one of you needs to go out and corral at least one buddy, maybe two, and get them to wake up. All right?